This is the regular monthly Woodbridge Board of Finance meeting for Thursday, January 17th. And the first item on the agenda is public comments. No? Okay. Before we do item 2, which is the Amity budget, several of our members, most of our members are going to be leaving. So there's 3 items that have to be voted on that I want to take care of, which will be very quick. So if we could move on to, I'm going to make a motion that we move items 4, 5, and 6 up to after public comments. Okay, any discussion? All those in favor? Aye. Okay, let's get this. So the first is funding requests, which we have 2, line item transfers. And the first is within the Human Services Department, and it's a transfer needed to cover the costs of the senior luncheon program meals through the end of the fiscal year. And I'll move acceptance of line item transfer 181909 in the amount of $7,000. Any discussion on this? It's really just a formality. Okay, all those in favor? Aye. Okay. And the second is a transfer for the senior center to revise the senior center ramp layout to accommodate unforeseen drain piping. I'll move acceptance of line item transfer 1819-10 in the amount of $17,462. Is there anything we need to know about this? Pretty cut and dry?
Pretty self-explanatory.
Yeah, okay.
There was a drain pipe that we couldn't avoid
Okay.
for the facility.
Okay. Any questions on that?
The ramp just got pushed out a little, so it's beyond the drain pipe. Yeah.
Any questions? No? All those in favor? Aye. Approval of minutes. We have the November 15th minutes. This is our last regular meeting. I'll move acceptance of the minutes of Tuesday, November 27th as presented.
Second.
Any adjustments or corrections? Hearing none. All those in favor? Aye. Opposed? Abstained? Okay. And finally, we have to approve the, we've already seen these, but we have to vote and approve the proposed Board of Finance meeting dates. If we don't, they become special meetings, which we don't want to have happen. So I'm going to make a motion that we approve the proposed Board of Finance meeting dates for 2019.
Second.
Any comments? All those in favor? Okay. Told you it'd be quick. Okay, number 2 on our agenda is the Amity Regional School District FY20 budget, which will be presented by our new superintendent, Dr. Jennifer Byars. Her first of what I hope will be many presentations. And with that, I'll turn it over to Dr. Byars. If you don't mind, would you just introduce your team members to us?
Absolutely. So thank you all for having us here tonight. With me tonight is Scott Cleary and Terry Loomis, who are both critical members of our school business office and really are the driving force behind the budget. So I wouldn't be here tonight if it wasn't for them. 100% true. So our entire school district budget is going to be based on 2 things. First, our mission statement, which really outlines the vision that we have for an Amity student and an Amity graduate when they leave us. And it's also connected to the goals that the Board of Education sets. I would like to recognize both the board as well as the Finance Committee, who will provide plenty of input on this budget throughout the process. The district goals that guide us, really, I always tell people if we're not able to link our budget items back to the goals, then we probably shouldn't have those items in the budget to begin with. So we really have 3 main focus points. The first is to provide an excellent instructional program and to continuously look for ways in which we can improve that. The second is to make sure that we're using resources, which includes our taxpayer dollars, efficiently. And the third is to foster a supportive climate for our students and adults. And that became extremely apparent to us how critical that was back in November, and has been some of our major work that we've been doing for the past couple of months. So I'll go very quickly through what the budget actually gets the towns of Bethany, Orange, and Woodbridge. The first is it provides an excellent school system where all of our schools are ranked either as an A or A+ on niche.com. We currently have 4 National Merit semifinalists. We have our professionals present at regional conferences because of the work that we're doing. We have some pretty phenomenal programs. Our high school right now is involved in NEASC, which is the accreditation process that all schools have to go through to say that they are schools that are worthy of sending kids basically onward to college and that they meet very high standards. Our CAS middle level exemplary educator is Rob Frangione, an exceptional music teacher. We have some finalists in our National Geography Bee. For purpose of comparison, we often look at ourselves with respect to what we call DIRGs, district reference groups. These are essentially towns or school districts that have about the same size population of students and have the same ability to pay. So when we're comparing our, say, academic results, we often look at our DIRG because comparing us to a place like New Haven isn't necessarily an apples to apples comparison. The DIRG is a much more fair comparison when we're looking at our progress. In terms of our academics and accountability, we currently offer 26 advanced placement classes with 48 sections, 893 enrollments in our AP classes out of a school of 1,500. So that's a little bit more than half of our students that are in AP. We have early college experience classes. These are classes where students can earn credit at UConn simultaneous to the work that they're taking in the school. We have 89 students enrolled in science research projects where they're actually completing their own independent science research, and 108 student organizations and clubs. And these are really driven and motivated by our students. In terms of our accountability, our SAT results, these are school days, so they're compared to all the other students in the state. You can see we perform extremely high when compared to the state. ACT results are really more of a select group. These are kids who are most certainly going to college and believe they need the ACT as part of their entrance requirements. So it tends to be oftentimes more of your college-bound students and not all of your students, which is what the school day SAT represents. Smarter Balance is the assessment that's used for students in grades 7 and 8. Again, you can see how Amity performs compared to the state averages of students who are either meeting or exceeding the benchmarks. And then we have a state accountability system whose purpose is to really measure schools beyond just state tests. So it looks at access to the fine arts, it looks at our career and technical education programs. And some of the notable distinctions that we have is 96% of our 9th graders are on track for a 4-year graduation, 82% of our students go on to post-secondary acceptance, 71% of our students meet the fitness expectations, and our middle school in Orange is recognized as a high-performing school, which is the highest distinction that a school can be awarded. Athletics, I teased my athletic director. First of all, this font is bigger than it was when he gave it to me, but my worry is next year because right now everything listed for just the fall season is already longer than 2017 and 18 last year all put together. But basically the long and short is we provide, in addition to our academics, an excellent athletic program. This is probably our proudest accomplishment. The Class Act School really is a recognition of our sportsmanship. And so it's not just about winning, but the manner in which we do so. And you can see that we have now 5 years of this recognition, but 3 in a row for 2015, 16, and 17. And truly that is an accomplishment that you don't see in many other schools in the state. We are also providers of the arts. The Addams Family Musical last year was recognized as the best state musical in the state of Connecticut. We have exceptional chorus, orchestra, instrumental music, and our visual arts students oftentimes are presenting and opening at gallery shows across the region. We are also committed to service, and one of the things that I like about this list on the service, first of all, within this year we have had 17 student organized either food or clothing or gift drives, but we also have service with our teachers and with our coaches. So it's not just limited to our students, but the entire community really believes in that idea of giving back. Pupil Services is the service we provide to our students with special needs. You can see that we've offered several unified programs in the arts, in sign language, and unified sports we've had for so long we couldn't even remember how many years that we've had it. But most importantly, this year we've established a transition academy. So students who are significantly disabled are allowed to attend school up to the point that they're 21. And so even though they leave our high school, they are going into a transition academy where they receive the life skills and kind of the job training, like how to participate in a job interview or to fill out a resume or complete a checkbook or to do their laundry. And that's part of our transition academy. Right now it's located at Albertus Magnus College. We have 8 students enrolled, and we're looking to increase that next year to 13. Our curriculum and instruction includes curriculum coordination across all of the BOA districts so that we have a K-12 alignment of our instruction. One of the things I think that we also believe in strongly is this idea of train the trainer. So while we provide our professional learning to our staff, what we really try to do is build our own capacity so that way we're able to train the other people and the other teachers and the paraprofessionals within our district. And once we have an initiative going, we can keep it going with our own staff. Our operations, we are a Connecticut Greenleaf Schools. We complete comprehensive policy review once a month, but we've also had 9 clean audits with no recommendations to improve our financial operations. And that is something of which we are extremely proud. Our intergovernmental operations are you guys. That is the work that we're doing with our technology, both here in the town, as well as work that we're doing with the Woodbridge School District and helping them support their student information database. Facilities, we've done a lot of upgrades over the course of the past couple of years. Some of these have been on the list for a few years because they're multi-year projects. But one of the things that I think is pretty impressive is the hosting of the Connecticut School Buildings and Grounds Association trade show. I know that this happened actually when I was in my previous district, and my maintenance director came and said, "Did you know that they're doing that at your new school?" And I was like, "Yeah, I do." It's like, "That's a really big deal." I said, "I know." And the reason why is because our school facilities are so fabulous. They're willing to have those trade shows come and be part of the Amity schools. Technology, our big push this year is the one-to-one device implementation so that every one of our 7th grade students has their own laptop computer that they're able to use in the classroom as well as bring home. Many of these pieces are connected to that because in order to have the one-to-one, we needed some of these additional resources. We're also completing a security audit for our technology, and we continuously expand our security camera coverage at all 3 schools. So in terms of the process of developing the budget, again, I was very fortunate because by the time I came on board in mid-November, much of the budget work had already been done by my administrative team and by the staff in our finance department. But we have a couple things that we have to do right from the start. The biggest being that there are several mandates, both federal and state, that we have to meet. Some of them are partially funded, some of them are completely unfunded, but we still have to do those. We also want to continue to offer the excellent programs that you just saw that we provide in all 3 of our schools. And at the same time as we're doing that, we do want to be cognizant of the fact that this is not our money, but it's taxpayer money, and we want to limit the amount that we're asking from the taxpayers to support that. We start the process in August, and it's really a very collaborative process, starting at the school level between the teachers to their departments or content areas or teams. Those funnel up to the principals. Eventually the principals and the central office staff come together, and we all make decisions as a group as to what impacts the district grades 7 through 12. And of course, we present to several folks throughout the course of the springtime. So, we have a few meetings. You are the first, and have that distinction. But what we're looking at for the 2019-2020 budget is an overall increase of 1.84%. You can see the variance that occurs for the towns. This is directly related to the enrollment of the number of students that are enrolled from those towns. Obviously, Bethany has a significantly declining enrollment, which is why their variance goes down. And then really Orange and Woodbridge have fairly steady enrollment, but because Bethany drops, your portions go up. So looking historically at budget increases, you can see that with the exception of the 2014-15 year, our budget increases average about 1.97%, and the 1.84 is still below that average over the past 5 years, and fairly in line with what we've seen for the past 4-year trend. Of course, we make assumptions in the process of this forecast. If we had to budget for everything, we would be doing that probably all year long because things constantly change in a school. So we do have to make some fairly significant assumptions. A few of those that really do impact us is first that the federal and state funding isn't going to significantly change. While it's a relatively small part of the budget, it's still several $100,000, and we assume that we're going to get that, and that's not going to differ. We also assume our student enrollment isn't going to change drastically. We look at this in a couple of ways, but essentially what we do is we roll forward our numbers, so we assume that the kids that are in 6th grade are going to roll up into grade 7, and the kids that are in 11th are rolling up into grade 12. We get a lot of information from actuaries and from our insurance providers to help us understand what our increases are going to be with respect to workers' compensation or our medical and dental insurance. And then we, of course, have to use some averages for those things that we haven't yet bid out for our fuel services and for some of our other utilities costs. We also try to look at long-range planning because we realize that that's built into the budget every single year. And the things that we look at are what I kind of call big ticket items, but again, ultimately in the course of the budget, some of these really don't occupy a large part of the pie chart. But we do a 5-year plan for our textbooks and our digital resources because we know that that's something that we want to sort of spread out evenly over the course of time. We know that we need technology in our schools, and again, we want to have it balanced from year to year, so there's no one year where we have to put a lot into that technology, and we do the same with our facilities. We do have a couple bonds on here that we are anticipating that we may look to complete, and those would be related to some of the more significant capital improvements that we have in our 5-year capital improvement plan. We also take some risk in the budget, and again, if we didn't do this, the budget would be really high, so we have to assume a few things. The first, again, is that federal and state grant, because as you know, well, as the past month has kind of proven to us, we can't really count on the federal government to be able to provide us with the money that we need, and the state even last year was in sort of a volatile point where we weren't really sure whether or not we were going to get some of their funding. We assume a certain amount of turnover when we create the budget, and it's based on averages, and it's entirely possible that all the people that we're predicting are going to retire may not, and that can also impact our overall line items. We assume our special education tuition and transportation is going to be the same, so in other words, we know every single student in the district what schools they're going to go to and how much it costs to get them there. That's actually probably one of our biggest risks, because kids can move from all over the place at any point in time in the year. And sometimes they come from schools and placements that are significantly expensive. We assume snow removal. I have been blessed so far that I haven't had to worry about this, but there have definitely been years where that has been a significant change in the budget. So let's talk a little bit about the fund balance, because I know that that came up last year. So as I was applying for this position, I was watching board meetings, and the first one I watched was in September when the Board of Education had to talk about their fund balance from the year before, and I think that Selectman Heller came and spoke to them. But what we see is we are advised that a fund balance of about 3% is where we should be. And that's really because as a regional district, we go out to referendum to request our money. And if we ran out of money, it's not like a school that can go back to the town and ask for an additional allocation. We actually have to go out to referendum to the voters again. So that's part of the reason for the 3% fund balance. If you look 14, 15, 16, 17, they are all closer to that 3%. This really was 2018 an anomaly compared to the way that our past fund balance has run. And part of the reason why for that year is this bar right here. It's where it's coming from. So this represents a change in the medical usage. We're self-insured, and so we set aside a certain amount of money for our insurance. We had extremely healthy employees who didn't tap into that last year. And even though we get predictions on a quarterly basis, they're often running behind by a few months, so that's something that doesn't really catch up to us until after the fiscal year has actually closed. But again, I want to show that the fund balance doesn't always come from medical. In some years, it comes from special education, where perhaps not as many students went to an out-of-district placement as we originally thought. Or sometimes it comes from fiscal management, where we're able to maybe refinance bonds and actualize a savings. So I don't want there to ever be a perception that it's just always related to the insurance. That was 1 year, it was last year, and that was unanticipated. Again, looking at that insurance, you can see that these were the expenditures over the past 5 years, and when you look, this was last year, so it was the lowest year over the past 5 years, and that's with medical costs increasing. So it was a significantly low year for our expenditures on the medical and dental side. Where does the fund balance go? Well, again, over the past 5 years, 81% of it has been returned back to our municipalities. 76 just directly returned to the member towns, 5% assigned to the next year's budget. We try not to do that because what it does is it artificially lowers the budget, and then the following year you would have a significant increase. So that probably occurred when we needed some funding for a particular reason, but we're going to avoid that as much as possible, and really just, if we're going to return it to the towns. Has been used for a couple of other things. The first year we did the self-insurance, we used it to put in the fund balance that we needed for the self-insurance. This is a couple bad years of facilities repairs that we weren't anticipating, or snow removal, and then some operational issues that we had to address. When we compare the budget from, say, year to year, and again, over the past 5 years, if we do budget to budget, you can see, again, that's about that 1.97% increase. When we look at the actual to budget, so it hovers around 3.5. That's not a fair comparison because, again, that deals with that fund balance part that we have left over and remaining after the year. When we look at our increases from the actual budget to the actual budget, you can see that for what we've actually spent, we're going just a little bit above 1% increase over the past 5 years. So, education is a labor-intensive process. You can see that about 2/3 is in salaries and benefits that we provide to our employees. About 9% is in our special education, and another 9% in debt service. You will not see debt service in the budget for the school board for Woodbridge, and that's because you carry their debt, whereas a regional school district has to carry their own debt. And then finally, here is the other. This is everything else: textbooks, technology, the things that we use, like our utilities, our facilities projects, our paper, our pencils. Everything else is in the 16% that is the other. So in the 1920 budget, we do have some shifting accounts. The salaries, benefits, and everything else are all projecting to go up. Where we are recognizing savings is in special education, as well as the debt service. This is the result of a refinancing of our bonds. And we'll talk a little bit about where some of those special education savings come a little later in the presentation. And same slide, just with the percent changes. So, if we are a labor-intensive market, our bargaining agreements with our unions drive much of our budget. And if you look, about 2.42% or 2.41 is our average of our increases to our bargaining units. These are budget increases. What this really means is that if we're operating budgets that are lower than the increases to 2/3 of our cost, we're finding savings in those other areas, in special education, and really in that part of the pie that's other, where we look for the efficiencies that we can find in the district and operationalize those. The changes that are really driving this year's budget are primarily related to staffing, and it's really in two areas. This is all related to special education. So to the greatest extent possible, we are trying to bring students back into our district, where we can educate them with their peers, where we can educate them close to their home, where we can educate them with services that we think are appropriate for them. And there's actually a savings to be seen when we bring a student back into district. But if you bring enough of them back into district, then you need the support to actually help those programs to run. So we are looking to add one special education teacher. This is specifically to address needs that we have at the high school, where we have an increasing population, one paraeducator, and then 2 job coaches. These are part-time positions. One would work in the transition program that we have at the high school. One would be attached to the transition program that we currently have at Albertus Magnus. The last big piece is security. We had a security audit completed recently by Homeland Security. It was last summer. They made some suggestions for ways in which we can improve the security of our buildings. And one of the things that they recommended sort of most forcefully was putting in sally ports. We've also heard that from our parents, because every one of our elementary schools, from Orange to Woodbridge to Bethany, has sally ports in those school buildings. And when they come to the middle school, they're a little surprised at how open our buildings are. What a sally port is basically is it's a double locking mechanism system as you enter the school. So you have to be buzzed into one set of doors. You're inside a contained lobby where the next set of doors is still locked, and you aren't allowed in until the security guard checks your ID. You get a badge, they know where you're going, and they know that you're there for a specific purpose. Once you've done all that, it buzzes you into the main part of the building. In order to do that, because our buildings are used constantly, somebody told me the high school is like, New York City, it's open 24/7. We need to provide some of these security guards at night, and then also because the current security staff during the day is still walking around the building, checking back doors, making sure that the bathrooms are okay, going into the lunchroom. We need to add some additional support so that we can still provide that security during the day, but have somebody at the front door who can buzz people in and make sure that our schools remain safe. Over the past 5 years, you can see that in terms of certified staffing, we've only increased it by 0.7, and that really was a change from this slide last year because specifically of the special education teacher that I just referenced earlier. Most of our staffing changes occur in classified staff, and you can see the security is kind of a bump right now because of our efforts to put in the sally ports. The other place where we see that increase is related to special education. Our enrollment projections, I think every municipality in the state keeps hearing about these kind of dire enrollment declines, and I don't know that anybody's actually seeing that. And I certainly think that that's true for Amity. This is what we call roll forward enrollment. So again, we just take the current year and we roll it into the next. We use the data coming from the elementary schools as well. But we also use a separate organization called NESDEC who also completes enrollment projections for us, and we're all seeing the same thing, that the declines are not as significant as originally anticipated, and we bottom out usually somewhere in this school year, and then the enrollments start increasing again. And that would probably make sense. I believe the enrollments are going up at the elementary schools, and as those kids start to funnel up to the middle and high schools, it would make sense that our enrollments are going to start to increase as well. What's also fascinating is I looked at the enrollment changes in percent over the past 5 years. And what you can see is that from year to year, it's over 10 years, from year to year, we have some fairly significant percent increases and percent decreases. But if you look at the trend lines of all 3 schools, the slopes of every single one of those is almost 0. So what it means is that from a year-to-year basis, we may have enrollment shifts, but if we're looking at that trend over the 10-year period, we're remaining relatively flat. They're just changing which school that they're actually in. The other thing that we're seeing change, and this goes directly to the request for the special education teacher, is the percentage of students who are identified with an individualized education plan or who have special needs. That is most certainly increasing, but what's more important is their disabilities are changing. So again, these are all the different types of disabilities students can have. And there are 3 places where we're seeing changes. One is an OHI, that means other health impaired. So these can be students who have medical needs. The second is in learning disabilities, and you can see there's a pretty significant spike in 2018 of students with identified learning disabilities. But the one that's really tough is this one, MD. It stands for multiple disabled. These are students who are so significantly disabled that we can't come up with one primary disability. They have so many disabilities that we just have to say there's not one that's overriding the other. They require a lot of support, and that's the one that we see in climbing. This is the other reason why we have a special education teacher requested. If we look over the course of 3 years, the cost of putting a student in an out-of-district placement, the average cost, is $105,000. If we take all those out-of-district placement students out of the equation and just look at the cost for special services in Amity Region 5, the average cost per student is $19,000. So if we believe that it's the right program for students, we want them back in our district because in the end that's better for our taxpayers, it's better for the budget that we put forth. But most importantly, again, I will emphasize this, we think it's better for the kids. We want them here with their peers in their town. The equipment that we're looking at to purchase this year is really most of it related to technology, and what we're seeing again is a switch. We are buying new equipment to go through implementing our one-to-one devices. Next year we will be implementing them in grades 7 and 8. As we put in that new equipment for the one-to-one, we are decreasing our replacement equipment because we don't need as many of the computer stations and the computer labs because all of the students have their own devices at that point. Of course, we have building and site improvements planned. These are part of the capital project. We know these are coming every year. Several of these are going to be things that you see often. Resanding and repainting the gyms occurs in cycles, and it happens at one of the schools every single year. We continue to look at improving security items. We always need to look at repairing our asphalt and the driveways and the parking lots that we have. And then we always put in a facilities contingency. This is critical. We found that out this year when the elevator in the high school broke. A pump failed in a 25 or 27-year-old elevator. It is a custom-made part. We have been without an elevator in the school until next week, we hope. But what that means is we have to shift at least 12 students, all of their classes, to the first floor because they are unable to access the second floor. That's when we dip into the facilities contingency because the cost of that pump and the repair was pretty significant, it was unexpected, and it was absolutely 100% necessary. Our debt service, you can see that our debt service is going down over time. And I also want everybody to know that the 1.84% didn't come without a little blood, sweat, and tears. The initial budget increases that, or the budget requests, resulted in an increase of 3.49%. And after that, we have a significant meeting of our principals and our central office staff, our directors, and we were able to reduce that down to a 2.53% request. And then after that, I sit with my finance team and we further look at the budget and try to find places where we are going to be able to reduce a little bit more, and that is how we end up with the 1.84. So this has already come through a process where we've looked very closely at the requests that came in and have tried to bring it down to as low as possible. Some of the things that we've reduced, we cut out a world language teacher, even though we have mandatory 2 years of world language for all of our high school graduates. We reduced math coaches at the middle schools that would be used to help improve our mathematics instruction and provide some instruction for our students who are struggling in math. We cut out a math teacher, a .4 math teacher at the high school who would have helped with our alternative program. We cut out requests for new musical instruments at the middle schools. As though they're sort of on their last legs, so to speak. They require significant repair. We know we need to replace them, but we weren't in a position where we were ready to go to the taxpayers and ask for that yet. We cut out some improvements to furniture and equipment. We also looked at accounts like related to, say, communication, like mailing or our instructional supplies, and looked at actuals. And if we thought the request was really off base from what the actuals have been, we further reduced those. There's also a set of requests that we have, are hoping we will be able to use funds from the current year's budget to put into place. This is a risk because if we don't have this money by the end of the school year, we are not going to be able to purchase these items. And they will also be deferred until the next budget cycle. And again, this includes a lot of new furniture, some supplies, but the biggest are those building improvements, the sally ports that we're looking at to put into the schools. These are the enrollment changes, and again, this is where you see those percent changes coming into play, with Bethany having that fairly large drop, and both Orange and Woodbridge remaining a little bit more stable and not that significant decrease. And just a visual for how the town allocations work out. And that brings us back to our budget proposal of 1.84%, which really adds special education services and security guards for our students' safety. And I'd be happy to answer questions.
Thank you. Anybody have any questions?
I do.
Good.
What is the bonding for in 2020?
So we have a capital plan, large portion of that 3.2 million, about 1.8 I think is HVAC. We had a study done in 2016 of all our HVAC units. They're over 25 years old, so we're in a priority order of replacing them. I'm trying to think what some of the other things are on that list. It will most likely be in the year out, the following bond is the 1.2 is a potential restoration or replacement at the end of high school.
Is that bonding something that you're gonna have to come to the taxpayers for?
Yes, we will have to go to referendum
That's
for
what I
that
was
as well,
saying.
yes.
Not the football
Parking lot
field.
replacements, that's
That's
where we're
not-
gonna address the musical instruments, because we may do it, the middle school brought it to our attention, but we realized we probably should look at the high school and make sure if we're gonna do a purchase that we have addressed all the needs. A building clock system may be on that list, and there's a thought of a garage bay addition, which has been on this list for a while, but they will all go through our facilities committee first, and then.
Okay. And one other question. I mean,
Yes.
the number of students in advanced placement classes is amazing.
Yes.
I mean, is that just the number of students overall, counting that some students actually take more than one AP class?
So that's enrollment, so
Okay, so
yes,
it
it
does.
may be a
Okay.
doubling up of some kids who
Okay.
are in more than one AP class.
Okay, all right.
But even
great.
still, that's an awful lot of AP.
Oh, and it's wonderful.
Yeah.
This was a great presentation.
Thank you.
very much.
Anyone else? You might have come in late, but you hit the ground running, I'll tell you.
Oh, yeah.
Really, as I told you the other night, really, I mean, for considering you just got here, it was an excellent presentation, so. And with that, thank you.
Well, thank you very much. I appreciate all of you listening tonight. So.
Thank you.
It was very nice.
And good luck with calling all these snowstorms coming up. Starting tomorrow morning.
I know.
I'd like to tell you, there are 3 members of the Board of Selectmen here, as well in the corner.
So, hi.
Oh, there's
Four.
four.
Joe's
Four.
here.
Joe's here too, he's gonna sit in the
All right.
back now, sorry.
Nice to meet all of you or see all of you.
So 5 out of 6, we're here.
All right. Thank you.
Thank you
Okay,
very much.
thank you. Now, let's get as much as we can. What time you guys, Paul, you gotta leave soon?
Yeah.
Okay. And the rest of you have to leave what time?
Well, I have to pick up my husband, so 10 of 7.
All right, well, let's just do Tony's report.
Okay.
The rest of it is really, Beth doesn't have a report.
Right.
We'll just skip liaison. Anthony,
Yes,
the floor is yours.
Okay. So, I have the financial report for the first 6 months of the year, and on our revenues, we have if you look at the second page of the memo, I did a little summary.
Yeah, I
To
like
help
that.
you.
Thank you very much.
That's very helpful as well at the Board of Selectmen.
Yeah.
It was great.
So those are the either surpluses or deficits in each category, just so you can sort of see where I came up with the total. So, the interest income is a surplus $120,000. We continue to do well with our investments. Our state grants are projected to experience a surplus of $142,000, mainly due to additional municipal stabilization money that we received in the budget. And we do have a shortfall in the charge for services account, which is $62,000, most of which is due to, all of which is due to the closure of the outdoor pool. There is some savings in the expenditures to offset that. And finally, in the other revenues category, there's a surplus there of $765,000. The town received $982,000 in surplus funds from the Amity School District. And so in this projection, I reduced that amount by the amount that we have in this year's budget, for next year's budget, which is $220,000. Assuming,
Increase that we're gonna
yeah,
see.
assuming you're going to use a portion of that to offset budget next year. That's of course your decision, but I figured that was a likely scenario. So that's where that comes from.
That's pretty amazing, that number.
Hey, Tony, can I ask you a question on waste management?
Pardon?
Can I ask you a question on the waste management?
Sure.
So, they're looking at a $20,000 deficit.
Mhm.
And what kind of fees are they thinking they're gonna collect to make that up? I mean, they're gonna-
So, I think Orange charges $95 a ton to haulers to bring garbage into the transfer station. So, depending on how many tons we bring in,
Because you're not talking about to the residents.
no,
You're talking
it's to
about-
the haulers.
Haulers.
You're not gonna increase fees for,
No, we're buying, we're putting a scale in.
right, I understand that.
Right.
That was gonna be my
So the charge will be for the haulers that don't currently pay to dump at the transfer station. So most of our surrounding towns, pretty much most all of our surrounding towns have a transfer station that accept solid waste from haulers, charge the haulers, and so we do not, because we don't have a scale.
We were about to start.
Right, no,
So-
I understand that, but, so, I understand with the scale, I didn't realize we didn't charge the haulers at all. I thought we at least
No.
charged them some type of a fee.
Very small fee. It's like $100 per truck or something. It's
like
it's
registration
nominal. It's like a registration fee, and that's it.
Right, yeah, okay.
Yeah.
And as far as the scale, do we have any idea? Because I know, I've been up there, I mean, there's a
So we've got
lot of
this.
confusion, I guess, as to where it's gonna be.
We've come up with a location, and it's gonna be a little further away from the house, in the flatter area.
On the right side?
Yeah, as you go further
So
out into.
isn't there a cement slab over there now? Is that where they're looking to put it, near the containers?
I'm
Where
not,
they,
as you're coming in the
I know they were talking about, you have to cut the
hill
side
out.
of the hill.
Correct.
They're still doing that?
Yes. Yeah.
Okay, and they've looked at,
So just to make it wider there.
right. I guess it's just a concern on the weekends and certain hours during the week when the public's there and.
So there'll be a bypass lane, so that if
But the haulers won't be there on a Saturday.
that's well
Well, they are.
they saw it
Haulers?
sometimes. Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Really?
Yeah.
On a Saturday?
Yeah.
I sat in line and
Really?
waited for them to empty. Yeah, so-
I've never seen
Yeah.
that.
But
So
there should be a
Oh, really?
lane so that you can bypass the scale.
Okay.
If you're just like a resident and you want to drive by, you don't have
Okay.
to wait in line at the scale.
So they're looking to make up that difference through the scale.
Yeah, so if-
Charging.
So if it's $100,
Anything
roughly
near
$100 a
truck is-
ton, and we take 1,000 tons in. you can do the math.
Right, it's gonna take a while to get that in, right? I mean, what are they
The
looking
scale is probably going to be in by May,
at? Okay,
and then we'll do some training, some outreach. Hopefully by July 1st, we start
That's a
the
good date.
process.
That's a good date.
That's our goal.
okay.
Yeah.
Thanks.
Okay.
And these, have they been made aware of this, you think, the haulers, or we're gonna drop it on them?
We've mentioned it to the major.
There's only a
hauler.
couple, right? Two
Yeah,
or three?
there's 2 or 3, one major hauler and then two smaller ones. We mentioned it to the major hauler.
Yeah.
So they're
But they
aware of
pay it in every other town, so.
They do.
yeah.
Right,
But I
I
think
guess
that-
the only issue is if you don't wanna, if you hit them too hard, they could just go to New Haven or they'll go somewhere else. So, I mean, we wanna charge them a fee,
Competitive.
but we wanna be competitive. We
Right.
want, if we try to gouge them,
It's not a, yeah,
they're
it's,
gonna go somewhere else.
it's-
We're not gouging.
Well, then we're not gonna lose money anyway if we're only charging $100, right?
No.
well, because the $90 a ton comes from the fact that we pay $63 a ton to,
Get rid of it.
for a tipping fee.
Right,
And then another, I think it's like 20 or so to transport it. A little less maybe. So that's, 80s, in the mid-80s to just get rid of it. And then there's an admin fee on top of that. So there's direct costs related to those tipping fees, to those charges.
right.
It's not like a profit center or anything.
Right,
It's
yeah,
just to
yeah.
pass along the costs
I
that
just
we
didn't
have.
want, I wanna make sure that we're not increasing fees to residents.
No.
We're just
No.
hitting.
No.
The residents have to make sure that they don't get an increased fee, because they're already paying the
Right.
same fee that other towns are paying.
Correct.
So the haulers have been getting away with this for quite a number of years.
Because the rates aren't very different from
Right,
Woodbridge than from towns where the town charges a fee.
Okay.
Well, the haulers are gonna come to the residents and say, well,
right, right, but we
They
have
may.
to let the residents know that they should not, they should push back on any fee, because that's what they're charging other residents in other towns where they already pay this fee. So that
Yeah.
has to be a
It's
clear
not like
message.
Woodbridge residents get a significant reduction.
Right.
Because they're not paying the,
Yeah,
Correct.
yeah.
so.
That's correct.
We'll make, there'll be a little competition for this.
Right.
Where you have the people actually drive it there, like I do.
You could do that. You could bring it to and then you don't have to pay anything.
Right.
Okay.
Okay. And the only other major one in here is the Woodbridge Board of Education. At the point of this, it was November was when I put the report together. That's all they had. It's $218,000. You may have an update on that, but
I don't.
no. Okay.
The meeting's not till next week.
Oh, okay.
And we're not gonna be doing that anyway, okay.
So there, you can see that's the $860,000 surplus this year.
The audit, all set? I got a copy of it, so it
Yep.
must be done.
It's good.
Okay,
And
so we'll-
Scott will be here in 2 weeks
He'll be here?
to present to the combined boards.
Okay. And a reminder, that this coming Tuesday, this coming Thursday, and the following Tuesday, we have meetings, budget meetings, and anything else, Tony?
Nope.
We did funding requests, we did approval of minutes, we did a calendar year, and Beth, you don't have a report?
No, we had a very short meeting,
Okay.
and we had to wait for public comments, so we sit for 10 minutes. I just wish everyone a happy new year and thank everyone for all of our accomplishments. And so thanks to the Board of Finance as well for helping us.
In the last couple of minutes, anybody,
Thank
liaison-wise, nothing significant at Amity, anybody have anything that they want to say?
Actually, I do have one question. So there is a fund that was donated to the library. It has about $15,000 in it. And they don't have any immediate plans to use it. So the question came up about investing that money, even if it's through the bank that we use and you purchase a one-year CD. You can still make some money on that money.
You could. So what we do is, we have a series of funds.
Uh-huh.
And I generally don't charge interest back to the funds because we consider it we administer the funds. So there's a bunch of different funds. There's the Recreation has a fund, Human Services has a fund, the Senior Center has a fund, the library has a fund. So instead of charging interest back to the fund, we keep it in the general fund as sort of
But are you investing that at all?
we invest it
Okay.
with the rest of our public funds.
Okay.
So whether it's CDs or it's State Treasurer's Fund, or we have money markets, we have a bunch of different funds that we invested in. We just don't, the general fund collects all that interest as an income and doesn't,
Just for the town?
For the town
and
as a
doesn't actually give anything back?
correct.
So it stays unrestricted.
Correct, it stays, that's
Which
right, it
is-
stays unrestricted, and it stays within the general fund as,
Yeah.
you know, that's the part of that $120,000 I mentioned, is that we have a surplus, that's from there.
Okay, so their option would be to just,
We
do
have
the
trust
same?
funds,
Right, but this is,
then you can invest it more, you know, we have very limited in what we can invest money in anyway.
no, I know.
Yeah,
that.
you understand that, yeah, okay.
Yeah, yeah.
I mean, you could always change the way it's administered,
But
Yeah.
that makes it much more cumbersome.
it would, and it would be cumbersome, and there would be a lot of other entities that have similar balances and similar funds that would probably say the same thing.
Sure, I understand.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Anything else?
Yeah, just quick on, just hit the high points on the human services. They met last week. Looks like bathroom should be finished soon, hopefully within the next
I
month,
think we have a ribbon cutting on February 14th.
February 14th, so
Yeah, they're just
better
waiting
be done by then.
I heard about that.
We're just waiting for a couple parts to come in, and I
Yeah.
think it's done.
It's
Yeah,
scheduled
so,
for
so I
February,
actually went down there
think.
last week before the meeting, and it's looked close. So, also, I think it's on February 6th is a grand opening of the grand reopening of the Center Cafe. And that's from 1 to 3, and they'll be serving food and a little ribbon cutting at 1:30. And QVHD was in doing some type of disaster preparedness for the seniors. Any snow we may be getting this year, any problems they may have with that. They're also having somebody come in from Yale to do speak on the evils of vaping. It's big now, everyone's out there vaping, it's supposed to be better, but I don't think it really is. And the Santa on the fire trucks went off really well. They had a number of 21 children were referred to the fire department from Human Services. That was December 18th and 19th. And that seemed to go pretty well. Agreed?
Yes, I agree.
So that's really it. They're very busy, a lot of things going on. They're looking to do some work downstairs, and they've got a whole little diagram of some of the things they want to try and do to improve the senior center. And that's it.
Okay. That's everybody? I'll make a motion, we adjourn.
Second.
All those in favor? See you Tuesday, hopefully. Got a lot of work ahead of us on this budget.